weight of the badge. The smoke still clung to the market like the ghost of battle, curling through shattered stalls and the broken ribs of carts overturned in panic. Blood had long since dried on the cobbles. The wounded were gone. The bodies had been taken. Only the stain of chaos remained. Sergeant Winthrop stood with arms folded, a long coat buttoned against the bitter fog, surveying the mess with the weary look of a man who'd seen it too often to be shocked, but not yet often enough to be numb. The precinct scribe hovered at his side, stylus flicking with impatient clicks as he waited for a signature. The Black Maria had backed into the cracked stone square under the shadow of the Chronosanctum Tower. Its reinforced iron doors groaned open, and the gloom within pulsed faintly with red lumen strips. The prisoner compartment had been modified, temporary restraints and a padded bench fitted crudely in the wake of the incident. The stench of antiseptic clung to the air. Outside, an officer bearing a Medicaid armband tightened a bandage around the infected woman's thigh. Her limbs were restrained at multiple points. The swollen, mutated claw that had erupted from her back lashed tightly against her side with ceramite cords. She hissed softly through gritted, bloodied teeth, still conscious. Her lips moved in rhythm, mouthing fragments of that same song. The sea took her name, the sea took her kin. A sanctioned psyker stood nearby, clad in dull blue robes, his sanctioning brand shining faintly on his bald, sweat-slick brow. He scratched absently at a fresh cut in his arm, her parting gift before they subdued her. "She is not fully possessed," he rasped, gaze fixed on the trembling girl. "No demonic entity has fully breached her flesh yet, but—" He paused, the corners of his eyes twitching. "There is a tether, a connection. She is wet with the warp, like a wick before the flame." Constable Felix Dornhaus winced, adjusting the sling over his wounded arm. His face was pale, his jacket torn, and there was still dried blood on his collar. "If this is early possession," he said, "what does it look like in the end?" The psyker gave no answer. Just a quiet, long breath. He stepped back to the cart, whispering binaric sigils as a precaution. He would stay near the girl. Watch her. Winthrop watched silently as two Arbites enforcers, heavy combat shotguns in their arms, took position, one to the front, the other to the rear of the bound woman. They did not speak. They did not blink. They had orders. If the psyker's warning ever turned to confirmation, they would act without hesitation. Sergeant Winthrop turned to look across the street. The biocontainment team from Watling Street Manufactorum had arrived in full rebreather gear. They were spraying consecrated balm and caustic neutralizers over the blood-streaked cobbles. Servitors with bristle-brush limbs swept bone fragments and ruined boots into urns marked with hazard sigils. In the distance, the distant chime of a morning bell echoed down from the temple quarter. Felix lingered nearby. Winthrop turned to him. "Don't hover. Go with the nurses. Sanctum Medicae Trinova will have a cot and a dram of Amasec if you're lucky. There's a cart waiting?" "There is, and a pile of damned paperwork if you stay here." Felix didn't argue. He turned, wincing, and made his way toward the waiting medical dray where a pair of nurses in heavy coats waited to receive him. Winthrop called after him. "You did well, Felix. You'll make a fine constable one day." Felix stopped and gave a nod, grateful, though his eyes drifted back to the stained cobbles where the blood hadn't fully washed away. "But next time," Winthrop continued, glancing across the battlefield of broken stalls, shattered crates, and smeared gore, "if someone behaves like that," he gestured to the broken mess of synthale bottles and trampled hymnals, to the corners where the pale claw had gouged stone. "Use your pistol first." Felix nodded again, slower this time, then stepped into the cart. Winthrop lit a hoe stick as the wagon pulled away, leaving only the cold breath of a setting sun through green smog and a girl tied in chains, still humming. Constable Felix Dornhaus sat back against the padded side of the hospital cart, exhaling a slow, shaky breath. The ache in his shoulder was dull now, dulled by the shot of pain deadener the nurse had administered. The cart's wheels clattered over the cracked stone of Emperor's Way as they pulled clear of the market square. He let his head roll back, eyes half-lidded, and allowed himself, for the first time that day, to feel proud. He had stood his ground. He'd faced something that should not exist, something that sang as it tore at men with claws and unnatural laughter. And he had drawn his weapon, done his duty. His hand rested on the butt of his standard-issue Arbit's pattern sidearm, the weight of it reassuring. He gave it a gentle pat. "Next time," he said, smiling faintly, "pistol first." The nurse adjusting his sling smiled at him. She had soft eyes, tired but kind. He nodded to her with grateful confidence, as if he'd seen the worst the hive could throw at him and come through it with new iron in his spine. "I think I'm going to enjoy being a constable," he said aloud, not caring that no one had asked. Behind him, the lanterns of the marketplace faded into the fog. Sergeant Winthrop remained behind. Where blood still streaked the stone and glinting bits of synth glass were swept into urns by servitor brooms. He took a stylus and signed off on the chemical neutralizers the biosanitation specialists had requested. Standard decon protocols, though lately nothing had felt standard. He nodded to the lead tech adept, a gray-robed figure with a respirator mask and a clipboard embedded in his augmetic forearm. "Efficient work," Winthrop grunted. The adept bowed slightly and returned to coordinating his team, already spraying balm into the crevices of the alley stones. Winthrop lingered. He looked out over the scene, empty now save for the buzzing of med drays and the quiet clink of chains being loaded into storage bins. The Black Maria sat idle, the infected girl still restrained within. She hadn't spoken again, just hummed. Winthrop took a pull from his tin flask. The taste was sour. Could it get any worse tonight? He wondered. Of course it could. It always could. That was the weight of the badge, the curse of every city-bred constable, every Arbites, every enforcer in the Reach. Some days it was a shield, others it was a millstone. He closed his eyes for just a moment, then snapped them open. An adjutant was approaching, datapad in hand, crisp and efficient. Business never waited long on grimness. Back to it. A junior adjutant in light Arbites livery stepped forward, datapad in hand. He cleared his throat. "Sir, we've cross-referenced Logifexian's data and backtraced the movement of all infected individuals. There's a minor chapel beneath the Watling Street printworks. We raided it 20 minutes ago." Winthrop nodded slowly, lips pressed to a half-smoked low stick. "And? Caught a man there. Calls himself Rogel. Records show him as Ronald Markham of the Vine Street Markhams." Winthrop grunted. "Ah. Arrested his father back in the day for loitering during a shift parade. Faulty gene batch, that whole family." The adept gave a dry chuckle. "I filed 3 separate magistrate waivers for men with that surname in the last 6 months. This one's a registered apprentice, ink blessing specialist." Winthrop gave him a sidelong look. "Let me guess, soon as the irons were on, he sang like a caged grox. Worse, spilled everything, named names. We're compiling a full registry of associates now." He flicked through his notes. "One Amaranda Gent is styling themselves as the Deacon Metronome." Winthrop squinted. "That a cult thing, or am I too sober to understand it?" "No clue, sir. Could be both. Either way, the port grid just logged her and a companion, Reen, boarding a Ministorum-registered liner bound for Manifold Dawn." "Reen," Winthrop said. "Wasn't there a Reen listed as a suspect in the Spring-Heeled case last cycle?" "I'll check. Likely the same man." Winthrop scratched at his brow. "What about Dornstall? Still chasing ghosts?" The adept nodded. Last Vox ping had him coordinating with the River Patrol. They confirmed the stalker was Logi Astalan, overseer first class of the Watling Street Manufactorum. Winthrop's eyes narrowed. "Astalan. Figures. Killed 10 confirmed, wounded Emperor know how many more." He turned to the waiting constable. "Tell Dornstall overtime's approved. I want Astalan, and I'll have him wearing a servitor's faceplate by sundown, and I will tip a penny to the adept. Make sure they forget to remove his cerebral cortex. Make sure he enjoys his long life as a servitor working in the precinct sewers." The other man shifted uneasily, wondering if he should write that part down. Winthrop continued. "Have Dornstall check the Talmud too. If Sergeant Tremaine gives him any jurisdictional grief, tell him to come to me directly. City constables are a law unto themselves." The adept smiled. "Understood, sir." No one in the constabulary of any of the 7 districts had any time for the push city force. Fops the lot of them. Winthrop took a long drag on his low stick and exhaled a slow plume. "Bad business. I wonder what kind of malady laid that poor girl low." The adept shrugged. "Might be worth having the Medicae take another look." "We will. Label it, lock it down, start using the term Trinova malady." Winthrop spat into the gutter. Start pulling the Lectitio Divinitatis from circulation, any batch with crystalline pigment. Secure the tainted prints. Archive and classify. The adept nodded and tapped a code into his data slate. Already in motion. Anything else? Yes. Watling Street Manufactorum's foreman just called it in. One of the printmen's locked himself in a booth. Keeps reprinting the same devotional page over and over again. They say he won't stop until the cadence is perfect. Our team's en route with a breacher. Winthrop gave a heavy sigh. Next. Minor disturbances only. East Bank Macro Cannon Works had an agitator. Shift lead sent the embankment mob to shut him up. Routine. Oh, and Constable Trent's looking into a report from the Berkeley Square Manufactorum. Something about chanting coming from the confectionery vault. Winthrop looked up as the great Chronosanctum Tower emerged from the green-stained gloom, the last light of the setting sun diffusing across its fog-dulled face. It would be one of those nights. A Vox constable approached briskly. "Sergeant, Marshal's on the Vox." Winthrop rolled his eyes and took the receiver, one arm crossed, the speaker raised to a tired ear. "Marshal," he drawled, voice flat. "Let me guess. You're calling to ask why half the city smells like burnt ink and prayer oil." Winthrop leaned against the iron Vox box, its battered receiver cradled between shoulder and cheek, the faint hiss of static bleeding through before the voice came through. "Sergeant Winthrop," said the marshal, his tone clipped, too calm to be sincere. "Status update. What's the situation in the Trinova lower precincts?" Winthrop glanced over the blood-streaked cobbles and the last of the cleanup crews trudging through Market Square. "Contained, sir. Casualties processed, witnesses sorted, paperwork's already with the scribe. No new cases in this sector since 03. A pause. The marshal's voice came back low, but sharper. "And the press?" Winthrop knew what that meant. "The Trinovian Times has already printed an article. Late edition ran with screaming in the smoke, 'Where were the constables?'" Winthrop's tone was casual, as though reading off a lunch order. Another pause. Then, "They're stoking panic. We need this cleaned. Swiftly. Quietly. No sector-wide hab lockdowns, you hear me?" Winthrop raised an eyebrow. "Of course not, sir. That won't be necessary. We've already identified the majority of infected. The cult had a weak operational footprint, mostly illiterates and ink rats. We've got names, addresses, Vox signals. Once we collar Astalon, the stalker case is closed. No need for posters, no sweeps." He could hear the marshal exhale, faint but real. "Good man," he said. "The last thing I need is ecclesiarchy oversight questioning our readiness or, Emperor forbid, calling in the Ministorum Sanitation Corps." Winthrop smirked faintly. Or worse, he thought, an Ordo mandate. "Understood. My constables are working with the Mechanicus to isolate the bad prints and halt distribution. We've cleared 3 cult sites so far, and the River Patrol has eyes on the Taumad tributary." "Efficient," the marshal murmured, "just like your old reports from Cragford hold." Winthrop allowed himself a flicker of pride. "Appreciate that, sir. I want you to liaise directly with Fexian. His data logs are being read at the Curia now. We don't need him speaking out of turn." Winthrop's voice dropped. "He's a cog with discipline, and Dornstall's got his boots on Astalan's trail. Then I'll sleep tonight. Emperor shields you, Winthrop. And you, sir." The line went dead. Winthrop exhaled, lowering the receiver slowly. Behind him, the green-stained fog rolled in over the square once more, drowning the last sunlight beneath the weight of hive shadow. He looked to the scribe beside him. "Let's finish this. The marshal wants quiet, the Times wants blood, and the ecclesiarchy wants a scapegoat." He lit another host stick with shaking fingers. "We'll give them all what they want. But first, we get Astalon. Far below the smog-choked spires of Trinova, buried under strata of plasteel, ferrocrete, and forgotten administratum archives, the old command chamber of the forge lay still. Water dripped from corroded pipes, each drop landing with a hollow plink into a rusted collection bucket, a rhythm as old as the city itself. Adeptus Arbites Marshal Henrik Vos set down the Vox unit and exhaled slowly. "I think we're in the clear." From the far end of the vaulted chamber, a voice screeched back. Metallic, nasal, far too sharp to be natural. "It had better be," hissed Logi Serena, her narrow frame silhouetted against a flickering wall of pict screens. "Or we'll be in the market for a new marshal, and perhaps a servitor to mop these floors while we're at it." Voss turned to glare at her, unimpressed. Across the room, perched atop her mechanical throne, the enormous bulk of Archmagos Sensorax Centauri let out a low grunt. An organic sound filtered through layers of vox filters and oil-clogged cogitators. "No one is getting lobotomized," she growled, "at least not without proper paperwork. And for the record, I decide who is or isn't Marshal." Serena recoiled, her metal talons twitching nervously. "I beg your pardon, my lady. I only sought to convey your expectations." Voss straightened his dark coat, a subtle Arbit's rosette glinting beneath the collar. "Well, at least we've identified the flaw in our plan," he said. "The supplement has unforeseen side effects." Centauri loomed closer, her throne hissing steam as she advanced. "Capital observation," she spat with dripping sarcasm. "If only someone could have foreseen that drugging the workforce might backfire. Now remind me, whose domain covers predictive analytics?" Serena looked ready to crumple. "We ran all the tests. No adverse symptoms, no deviation in task retention, no irregularities in endocrine responses." Voss cut her off. "Until they stopped taking it, then the problems began." He walked toward the central display, glancing at the flickering feed of the market square. Sergeant Winthrop's figure stood clearly amidst the wreckage. The infected maintain perfect compliance, a docile euphoria, as long as they continue reading the Lectitio Divinitatis. Once they feel fulfilled, they stop. The moment the reinforcement ends, the breakdown begins. Physical, mental, eventually. He gestured vaguely. Mutation. Centauri's mechadendrites twitched like agitated serpents. "You didn't test for withdrawal." "I didn't know I had to," Serena squealed. "Who would stop reading the Emperor's word? That wasn't part of the protocol." "No," Voss said coldly, "because you're more cogitator than human. You wouldn't understand." The Archmagos glanced sharply at him. Her throne groaned, reactors humming. Voss raised a hand quickly. "No offense, you pay me to speak freely. And let's be honest, this Deacon Metronome idiot could have come to us with his concerns. Instead, he starts a psalm-fueled cult riot," Centauri hissed. "That's what you get when you trust a cult." Voss chuckled, retrieving a silver hip flask from his belt. "They were harmless. I'd had half of them in cells before. Smarter than your average drudge, easy to manipulate. Plausible deniability if anything came back on us." The Archmagos' eyes narrowed. "Oh, don't worry," Voss said, sipping. "None of them knew about you. I arranged it through intermediaries." She leaned forward, intrigued. "And this intermediary? Gone. Back to Manifold Dawn. They never even knew who they were working for." Centauri relaxed into her throne. "Good. Then we can begin recovery. The forge must return to full output. No more delays." "You'll need new prints," Voss said. "We'll have to burn the infected copies." "Not this time," Centauri replied. "We'll phase the supplement through ration packs, perhaps in coolant tablets or drinking tubes. Something they can't skip. The divinity of efficiency must be maintained." Voss nodded. "We get the rest of the cultists by dawn and it's over. No sermons, no headlines, just another quiet purge." He turned, looking up at the screen where Trinova's hive spire loomed against the green-tinted dusk. "All we have to do," he said, "is make it through the night."